Now, let's say you finished with your song. You've recorded and edited all the tracks and mixed it, and now you want to share it with others. Well, that's when it comes to exporting out your song, and I'm going to show you how to do this. So, to export out your song, you go to the File menu and then down to Export, and you choose Audio. Another way of getting there is using the Export module over here. So, if you don't see this, just right click, go to Modules, and choose Export. So, over here, you can click on Export, and then you can choose from a couple of things here. Here are some sort of default audio formats that you can export to, or you can go to the advanced window. And the advanced window brings up the same dialog box if you go to File and Export and Audio. Now, what I really like about this advanced window is that you have a lot of options to customize how you want to export out your song. Where if you go to these over here, these are just going to export it out in these default setup preset formats over here. But I want to go through the File Export Advanced window so you've got all the options that you can choose. So over here are the presets. You can choose to export out just your buses or just your clips or maybe the entire mix. But we can go through all those similar types of settings by going through these categories over here. So as you can see, you've got different categories. I'm just going to minimize these so you can see each of them. We're going to go through each one so you can see what each does. So first off, you've got the file name and location. Now, as you can see, it's using these brackets and project name. That means it's picking up the name of your project and adding the name there. So that's saying my project name is Song Export, and it's exporting it out as a WAV file. Now, I will get to the format over here on why it's a WAV file. And then this is saving it to your projects folder and then the audio export folder. So in your project, when you create it, it creates an audio export. And when you do your export, that's where your exports are going to be found. Or you can click over here to choose a different location. So if I want to give it a different name, I could take this out and choose a different name, or I can even use further tags. So let's say I want to add the tempo of the song. I can click on this tags window over here and choose to add the tempo. So as you can see now, it's got my song name, underscore which I added, and then the tempo of the song. I find this really handy if I've got a bunch of exports. I don't remember what the tempo is. I like to add a tempo into the file name. Now let's move over onto the format. So under the format, you can select what type of file format you want to save it as. And there's a huge selection here going from lossless formats to lossy formats like MP3. Now I want to stick to a WAV file that is your lossless format. And then we're going to go through some of the other parameters here. So I started my project at a sample rate of 44.1 kilohertz. I could choose a higher sample rate or low sample rate. I'm going to stick with 44.1 because that's the sort of industry standard for CD quality exported out audio files. Then I can choose the file format. If I want to export this out as a mono file, I could select this, or split mono means there's two mono files for the left and the right, but I'll leave it set to stereo. Then you can set the bit depth. This project was recorded at 32 bits. I can downsample to 24 bits or 16 bits. 16-bit is the audio standard CD quality, so I'm going to select that. And if you're downsampling from a higher bit depth, then you need to add some dithering. So there's a bunch of different dithering plugins over here. I'm not going to get into too much detail, but a good one to use is this Power R1. I'm going to select that. What this does is when you're truncating down to a smaller bit depth, it does add some aliasing into the audio files, and dithering adds a low level of noise to correct any aliasing that might be happening. That's a very basic way of explaining of what actually dithering is, but it's quite a high format thing that you use to change from higher bit depths to low bit depths. Now, you can add some buffer sizes into the playback. Maybe you do an export, you find there's some clicks and pops that's happening in there. Then what you can do is increase this buffer size. But just leaving it set to playback normally does the job. Now that we've set the format, let's move over onto what we want to export. So I want to export out the entire mix. And this is going to be capturing my hardware output that I set up in my project over here. So this is going out my outputs 1 and 2, and I've got that ticked. If I had other outputs, I could select those. Also, with the source category, I can choose what I want to export. The entire mix is just going to be a stereo bounce down of the whole song. But maybe I want to export out by tracks individually. So I'll have individual audio files for each track. If I don't want to select some, I can untick them. So maybe I don't need the drums. So this will just export out the piano, the bass, the electric piano, and the guitar. If I want to get more details, I can click over here and choose other options. For example, maybe I want to mute the drums and mute the bass, but still export them. So you got that option to have extra project selections over there. Also, maybe I only want to export out the buses. You can choose from your buses there. You can choose your clips or even mix recall. So if you've set up different mix scenes, you can select which one you want to export. Now, I just want to export out mix one if I had to choose my mix recall, but I'm actually just going to go for my entire mix. Now, moving over onto the next section, here you've got your mix and render. Now, here you've got further options on things that you might want to include or exclude. So let's say, for example, you didn't want to include the track automation that you recorded in. I could just untick these so that it would be a more static mix, excluding the automation. But I'm going to leave these default options selected over here. Now, I could render out in real time, but with this unticked, it's going to render out silently after I've finished doing all these tasks. Now with the range. So this range is including the entire project. But I could, for example, maybe choose a time selection. So if you look over here, my song actually starts at bar 3, but maybe I want a bit of a run-in. So I could change the start time. So I could choose a different time selection. So maybe I want to go from bar 2 and maybe a little in. So we're going to go there. So that's just right before it kicks in. And then it's going to end at bar 13. That's a bit far. So let's change it to bar 12. So that is going to be my time selection for my export. I can just drag this down just to make sure what that time selection is. Now, when I've finished choosing all these options, what I next need to do is add this task to my queue. I click this and I can give the queue a name. So this is going to be my WAV export. And you'll see in a second now why I'm calling that. So that is my WAV export. And when I hit run, it's going to run this task and add the exported audio file into this folder over here. But you can do multiple tasks at a time. So let's say, for example, I also want to export this out as an MP3. I can go to Format, choose MP3, and then I'm going to leave everything else set the same. I'm going to add this task to the queue. Now, when I select an MP3, it's going to ask me for some extra options on the MP3 encoding. So for the bit rates, I want to set it to the highest bit rate. I'm going to leave it set to stereo, and everything else I'm just going to leave in its default state and click OK. And I'm going to call this MP3. So now what I've got is I've got two tasks. I've got MP3 and I've got WAV. And if I don't want to do the one task or run it, I can just untick it. But I'm going to leave these both ticked because I want to show you something. So we're finished with all our settings here. I'm going to click Run Tasks. And you can see the progress of the exports over here. And when it's done, you'll see there's little ticks next to each one showing that it's done. Now, if I just close this and navigate to that folder, you can see here in my audio exports, here are the exports of my song. And I can just click on one and test it out and check that it plays back in a player. So maybe test out in Windows Media Player if this is working. That's playing back perfectly fine. Try out the WAV file over here. Try that in Windows Media Player. And both are playing back fine. Now, another thing I just want to show you is if I go back to Cakewalk, let's say I want to do another export. So I go to File, Export, and Audio. It'll remember those settings that you set up from the previous export. So you don't need to set up each time these tasks. So I can just maybe say I want to do a WAV this time and run that task, and it's only going to export out the WAV. So that is how to export out your song in the different formats and the different tags and options that you have available to you. As you can see, there's quite a lot of options, but if you just run through each one at a time, you can select all the correct settings that you want for your export. So that's it for the video series. I hope you have a much better understanding now on BandLab Cakewalk and how you can use it for your songs and your productions. If you like this video series, definitely check out some of the other titles on the Groove3 platform.